I never thought I would be the type of person to air my dirty laundry online, but here I am, sharing my story of betrayal and heartbreak. My name is Tom, and I'm in my mid-30s, living in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle with my wife Jenna. We had been married for a solid 7 years, a marriage that I thought was built on trust, love, and mutual respect. We had both dedicated ourselves to groundbreaking stem cell research, something we were both passionate about and believed in deeply. But recently, things started to feel off. I could feel it in the air, like static before a storm. Jenna seemed more distant, often lost in her thoughts, and her once vibrant laughter was replaced with a hollow smile. I brushed it off as stress from our work or maybe just a rough patch, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. Small things began to change. She started coming home later than usual, claiming she was in the lab working late nights. The excuses became more elaborate: meetings with investors, seminars for research grants, and even networking events. I wanted to believe her. As a scientist, I understood the demands of our field, but deep down, I sensed there was something more to it. One day, while working late myself, I decided to surprise her with dinner. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed a car parked outside that I didn't recognize. My heart raced as I walked into the house, the smell of something cooking wafting through the air. I called out for Jenna, but there was no response. I thought maybe she was just busy in the kitchen, so I walked in to find her. What I saw next shattered my world. There in our living room was Jenna, laughing, flirting, and entwined in conversation with a man I had never seen before. It felt like a train wreck in slow motion. The walls of my reality crumbled as the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a casual meeting, it was an affair, and I was the last to know. I stood there, frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shout, to confront them right there, but I couldn't find my voice. Instead, I quietly backed away, the echo of their laughter ringing in my ears like a cruel melody. I felt sick to my stomach, betrayed and humiliated. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with thoughts of what I had seen. I recalled all the little signs, the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she smiled at me less often. I couldn't believe it. How could she do this to me? We had dreams, plans, hopes for the future together. I had devoted myself to her and our shared passion, and this was how she repaid me. The next day, I confronted her. I had spent the sleepless night crafting exactly what I wanted to say, trying to prepare myself for the onslaught of lies and justifications I knew were coming. When she walked through the door, I was ready. I could see the moment she realized something was off. I wasted no time. I told her I had seen her with that guy, and I demanded the truth. Her reaction was nothing short of infuriating. She tried to laugh it off like it was a joke, saying it was nothing serious, just a work colleague. The anger bubbled within me as she spun her web of lies. She claimed I was overreacting and that I was imagining things. How dare she? I pressed her harder and her facade began to crack, but she still insisted that my suspicions were unfounded. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. The emotional toll was unbearable. How had we gone from planning a future together to this? I felt like I had been slapped in the face by someone I trusted the most. It was all too much. As the reality of her betrayal sank in, I felt anger morphing into sadness. I had thought I knew her, but now I was left with a hollow shell of the woman I once adored. The pain of betrayal cut deeper than any knife. It was a wound that wouldn't heal easily. I wanted to lash out, to hurt her the way she had hurt me, but something stopped me. I realized that if I was going to get through this, I needed to plan my next steps carefully. I needed to find a way to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my future. It was time for me to think clearly and strategically. What would I do? Next, would I fight for our marriage, or was it time to walk away? After the confrontation, I had a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, sadness, betrayal. They all competed for space in my mind, making it hard to think straight. I spent that first night alone, packing in our dimly lit living room, replaying the events in my head. Jenna's ridiculous excuses echoed endlessly, like a taunting refrain. I couldn't believe I had once considered her my partner, my confidant. The following days blurred together. I went to work, but I wasn't really there. My colleagues noticed the change in my behavior. They whispered behind my back, concerned about my distracted demeanor. I tried to push through, burying myself in the data and protocols of our research. But every time I glanced at my phone, my heart would leap, expecting a message from Jenna, something to indicate that she was genuinely remorseful. But there was nothing, just silence. I had to gather my thoughts. I started doing some research of my own, digging into what I could find about infidelity and how partners typically react. I needed to understand the psychology behind her betrayal. What made her think she could get away with this? Was it a midlife crisis, a cry for help, or simply a lack of respect for me and our marriage? As I dove deeper into the topic, I stumbled upon a forum where people shared their experiences with infidelity. I spent countless hours reading stories similar to mine. Some were heartbreaking, while others were empowering. I began to feel less alone, but I also felt a renewed sense of determination. I wasn't just going to sit back and let this happen to me without a plan. I didn't want to just confront Jenna again without any strategy. I had to approach her differently this time. I needed to expose the full extent of her dishonesty and craft a response that would shake her out of her complacency. I decided to gather more evidence about her affair, not out of a desire to catch her in the act, but to arm myself with undeniable proof. I wanted her to see how serious this was and how her actions affected me. Over the next week, I began to track her movements. I noticed her patterns, the late nights at the lab, her phone buzzing with messages, and the way she would dodge my questions. I could feel the anger bubbling under the surface, and I had to remind myself to remain calm and collected. I didn't want to look desperate or weak. I needed to come off as composed and in control. One evening, I followed her after she said she was going to a supposed networking event. I parked a few blocks away from the venue she claimed to be attending and waited. My heart raced as I saw her walk toward a local bar instead. My gut twisted as I spotted him, the same man from the living room. They stood close together, laughing and chatting like old friends. A part of me wanted to storm over and confront them right there, but I knew that wouldn't serve my purpose. I watched them for a while, and as she leaned in closer to him, I felt a mix of rage and sadness flood my system. This wasn't just a mistake, this was betrayal at its worst. I snapped a few pictures with my phone, my hands shaky from the adrenaline. I had to keep reminding myself that I was doing this not just for evidence, but to reclaim my dignity. I was no longer the blind husband. I was becoming someone who would stand up for himself. The following day, I confronted her with the photos. I turned on my phone and displayed the images, each shot frozen in time, encapsulating the betrayal. Jenna's face paled as she realized what I had done. There was no escape this time. I could see the panic in her eyes as realization sunk in, and for a brief moment I felt a surge of power. Care to explain this? I asked, my voice low and steady. She stuttered, searching for words, trying to craft some sort of excuse that would make sense. But there was no escaping the truth anymore. The lies she had spun began to unravel, and I felt a grim satisfaction in watching her squirm. This time her laughter was gone, replaced with a defensive tone that only fueled my resolve. She started, but I cut her off. Just what, Jenna? Just having fun. Just being unfaithful to your husband. This isn't a game. You've broken something fundamental between us. You think it's okay to treat our marriage like this? Her responses morphed from apologies to outright defiance, claiming I had pushed her to this. The audacity. She tried to spin the narrative, painting me as the villain in her story. It was infuriating. I had spent years supporting her dreams, and this was her way of repaying me. I can't believe you would twist this around on me, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You chose to betray me. No one forced you into this. The confrontation escalated, and eventually I reached a breaking point. I couldn't keep beating my head against the wall, trying to get through to someone who was clearly not in touch with reality. I walked away, leaving her standing there, a mix of confusion and regret etched on her face. In the silence that followed, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I was tired of crying. I was tired of feeling like a victim. It was time to reclaim my life, to take control of my future. After everything I had seen and heard, I knew I could no longer remain in a marriage with someone who disrespected me so profoundly. The question that lingered now was, how would I move forward? From here, the next few days were a blur. I felt like I was on autopilot, moving through life without truly engaging with it. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere, consumed by the whirlwind of emotions and the magnitude of what I had faced. Jenna kept trying to reach out, sending texts filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I didn't respond. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I needed time to process everything. One evening, sitting alone in our darkened living room, I realized that I needed to make a decision. I couldn't keep going on like this, trapped in a situation that brought me so much pain. I had spent weeks trying to understand her actions, trying to rationalize the irrational. But no matter how many times I replayed our conversations, I couldn't find a coherent reason for her betrayal. As I sat there, I started writing down my thoughts, pouring out my feelings in a stream of consciousness style. I wrote about the love I once had for her, how we built our lives together, and the dreams we shared. I also wrote about the anger and betrayal that now clouded those memories. I needed to get it all out, to see the full spectrum of my emotions laid bare on the page. But more than anything, I needed to think about my future. What did I want? Did I want to fight for a marriage that seemed irreparably broken, or was it time to cut my losses and start anew? I had heard stories of couples who worked through infidelity, emerging stronger on the other side. But could I ever see Jenna the same way again? I called a close friend, Mike, who had been a sounding board for me in the past. He was straightforward and blunt, qualities I appreciated in our friendship. After I recounted what had happened, I could hear the shock in his voice. "Dude, you deserve better than this. You've given her everything and she threw it away for what? A fling." His words struck a chord. I had put my heart and soul into this marriage, invested everything I had into our life together, and here she was, gambling it all on a man who meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. I needed to remind myself of my worth. "Have you thought about talking to a therapist?" Mike suggested. "I mean, it might help to sort through all of this. Plus, it gives you a chance to think about where you want to go next." I considered his suggestion. I had always believed in the importance of mental health but had never sought professional help myself. The idea of talking to someone who didn't have a stake in my life was appealing. I could vent my frustrations, explore my emotions, and receive guidance on my next steps. That week I set up an appointment with a therapist. The first session was eye-opening. As I shared my story, the therapist listened intently, nodding at key moments. She asked questions that forced me to think deeply about my feelings and my relationship. "Why do you think Jenna chose to cheat?" she asked. It was a loaded question, one I had been avoiding. "I don't know. I thought we had a solid connection. We were partners in everything, but she clearly didn't see it that way." "Do you think she was unhappy?" I hesitated. I guess I might have missed some signs. Maybe she felt overwhelmed or stifled by the demands of our research. Or perhaps she sought validation elsewhere, the therapist suggested gently. Sometimes infidelity isn't just about the act itself, it can stem from deeper insecurities or unmet needs. I nodded, absorbing her words. It was a perspective I hadn't considered. In my quest to understand Jenna's actions, I had focused solely on her betrayal and failed to recognize that there might have been factors driving her choices. But in the end, that didn't excuse her behavior. As the weeks passed, I continued to attend therapy sessions. I found the process cathartic, a safe space to explore my emotions without judgment. I also began to focus on self-care, exercising, reconnecting with friends, and rediscovering hobbies I had neglected. I was learning to build myself back up, brick by brick, and it felt empowering. During this time, Jenna continued her attempts at reconciliation. She would leave notes around the house, send flowers to my office, and even tried to weave her way back into my life by calling me frequently. Each time I saw her name flash on my phone, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a flicker of longing for the person I used to know. One evening she cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes pleading. "Tom, can we just talk? I miss you. I want to make this right." I took a deep breath, holding my ground. "Jenna, you had your chance. You made a choice to betray my trust, and now I have to think about what's best for me. I can't keep going back and forth." The conversation escalated with her pleading and crying, but I stood firm. I could feel the anger inside me simmering, but more than that, I felt a sense of clarity. I was no longer the man who would simply accept her apologies. I needed to protect myself and my heart. As I walked away from her that night, I made a decision. I was done trying to pick up the pieces of a shattered trust. I would not allow her to manipulate my emotions anymore. It was time to focus on my own healing and embrace the future, whatever that looked like. I began to consider the possibility of separation. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I needed to put my needs first. I wanted to reclaim my happiness and move forward. My life, no matter how difficult the path ahead might be. In the weeks that followed, I started to take the necessary steps. I reached out to a divorce attorney for a consultation. It felt surreal to be discussing the end of my marriage, but I also felt a sense of empowerment. This was my life, and I was ready to take control of my own destiny. As I navigated this tumultuous period, I couldn't help but think about how this would all play out. Would Jenna fight for me, or would she let me go? More importantly, would I find the strength to move on and create a life that filled me with joy again? As I delved deeper into the separation process, I felt as though I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one that was uncertain but strangely liberating. I started making lists, not just of tasks I needed to accomplish, but also of my goals and aspirations. I wanted to reconnect with the man I had been before Jenna's betrayal, the one who had dreams outside of our marriage. The first step was meeting with a divorce attorney. This was a pivotal moment for me, transitioning from a state of emotional limbo to taking definitive action. As I sat in the attorney's office, I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. The walls were adorned with motivational quotes about new beginnings, which felt oddly fitting for my situation. The attorney, Lisa, was kind and straightforward. "Tell me your story, Tom," she said, leaning forward with genuine interest. I recounted the events of the past few months, from the initial signs of trouble to the confrontation and my subsequent decision to pursue separation. At the end, she nodded and offered advice on how to navigate the legal aspects of divorce. "It's important to be prepared for some emotional upheaval," she said. "Divorce can bring out the worst in people. You have to stay focused on your goals." Her words resonated with me. I needed to keep my eyes on the prize, my happiness. We discussed potential outcomes, asset division, and custody arrangements since we had a dog, Max, who was part of our family. I wanted to make sure he would be taken care of, regardless of what happened. As I left the attorney's office, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was finally taking control, breaking free from the cycle of pain that had consumed me. However, I knew that my path would not be easy. I still had to deal with Jenna and the emotional fallout from our relationship. A few days later, despite my resolve, I found myself in another confrontation with her. Jenna had come home early and caught me in the living room, surrounded by boxes as I began to sort through shared belongings. Her face fell as she realized what I was doing. "Tom, please don't do this. Can't we talk?" she pleaded, her voice trembling. I looked at her, trying to maintain my composure. I wasn't going to be swayed by her tears or her desperation. "What more is there to say, Jenna? You made your choice. I'm not going to keep pretending everything is okay." She took a step towards me, her eyes wide with fear. "But I love you. I've made mistakes, yes, but I want to make it right. We can work through this. We can start over." I sighed, feeling a mix of emotions swirling through me. "You had your chance to make things right. You chose to betray me. Saying you love me now doesn't change what you did." Her expression shifted from pleading to frustration. "You're being unreasonable. People make mistakes, Tom. I thought we could move past this together." I felt my anger flare. "Mistakes? This wasn't a mistake, Jenna. You didn't just trip and fall. You actively chose to cheat on me. And now I'm the one who's supposed to help you get over it." The tension in the room crackled, and I could see her struggling to maintain her composure. She tried to reach out for my hand, but I instinctively recoiled. I had to protect myself. "Please, Tom," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was just confused. I thought I could handle everything, and I ended up losing myself." I softened for a moment, tempted to feel pity for her, but I quickly reminded myself of the gravity of her betrayal. You lost yourself. What about me? I lost my wife, my partner, my best friend. You turned your back on everything we built together. Her frustration shifted to tears, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of true regret. I know I messed up. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know how to fix this. That moment hung in the air, heavy with unresolved emotions. I could feel the tide of anger slowly retreating, replaced by an overwhelming sense of sadness. But I refused to let that sadness dictate my choices. I didn't want to be the man who takes pity on a cheater. Jenna, I need time. I can't keep doing this. I've made my decision, I said firmly. I'm moving forward with the divorce. As I spoke those words, I felt both relief and sorrow. I was finally taking control of my life, but I also felt the weight of the loss. Jenna nodded, her expression shifting from defeat to resignation. I understand, she whispered, turning away from me. That night I found myself staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. Had I made the right choice? It was hard to let go of all the love we once shared, the dreams we had envisioned together. But I also knew I couldn't allow her betrayal to define my life. I was determined to move on, to reclaim my happiness and to start anew. In the days that followed, I focused on the logistics of separation. I hired a moving service and began packing up my belongings, deciding what I would take with me and what I would leave behind. I felt a sense of empowerment with each box that was filled. I was shedding the weight of my past and making space for a new beginning. Jenna tried to reach out during this time, sending messages that ranged from angry to desperate. You think you can just walk away from everything, she wrote. You're throwing away years of love for a mistake. With each message, my resolve only strengthened. I wasn't throwing away love. I was preserving my dignity. I wasn't going to let her guilt-tripping manipulate me into staying in a toxic situation. Each time I saw her name pop up on my phone, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I spent weekends with friends, reconnecting with the people I had neglected during my marriage. I found comfort in their support, laughing and sharing stories that momentarily lifted my spirits. I also started exploring new hobbies, painting, hiking, and even joining a local gym. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. As my confidence grew, I began to envision a future without Jenna, one where I could pursue my passions and build a life that filled me with joy. I realized that I could create my own happiness, independent of anyone else. But even amidst my progress, I couldn't shake the lingering thoughts of what could have been. Those moments would sneak in, memories of our wedding day, the vacations we took, the quiet evenings spent on the couch. I had to remind myself that those moments were now eclipsed by the betrayal. I deserved better. Then one evening, as I was preparing dinner, I received a call from my therapist. Tom, I wanted to check in and see how you've been handling everything, she said. Her inquiry prompted me to reflect on my recent journey. I'm doing okay, I guess. I'm focusing on myself, taking steps towards separation. It's challenging, but I feel empowered. I'm glad to hear that, she replied. Remember, it's okay to grieve the loss of your marriage. It's a significant change. Allow yourself to feel those emotions, but also embrace the possibilities that lie ahead. Her words resonated deeply. I had been so focused on moving forward that I hadn't given myself permission to mourn. I could feel the tears welling up as I acknowledged the loss of a future I had once envisioned with Jenna. As I hung up, I realized that healing wasn't linear. There would be good days and bad days, moments of strength and moments of vulnerability. But through it all, I would continue to focus on reclaiming my happiness and building a life I could be proud of. I decided to take a step back, to allow myself to feel the weight of the loss without letting it consume me. I was determined to navigate this journey one day at a time, finding my footing in the midst of chaos. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, whatever it held for me. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself embracing the changes in my life with a mix of trepidation and excitement. The separation from Jenna was a heavy burden to carry, but with each passing day, I felt a little lighter. I was discovering new routines, making new friends, and re-establishing connections that I had let slip away during my marriage. I was learning to enjoy my own company again, something I hadn't done in years. The legal proceedings moved slowly, and I found myself spending my evenings poring over documents and making decisions about dividing our shared assets. I had to remind myself that I wasn't just battling for material possessions, I was reclaiming my life. The thought of finally being free from the shadows of betrayal fueled my determination. One Saturday morning, I decided to take a walk through a local park. The weather was crisp, and the autumn leaves crunched underfoot as I strolled. The tranquility of the surroundings provided a stark contrast to the turmoil that had filled my life just a few months earlier. I had started to appreciate the small moments, the beauty of a morning sun, the laughter of children playing, and the warmth of a friendly smile from a passerby. As I wandered deeper into the park, I bumped into an old college friend, Sarah, who I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes lit up as she recognized me. "Tom, is that really you?" she exclaimed, pulling me into a warm hug. We spent the next hour catching up over coffee. I shared snippets of my life since college, including the highs and lows of my marriage and the recent separation. She listened intently, nodding sympathetically. "I'm so sorry to hear about everything you've been through," she said, her voice softening. "But it sounds like you're on the right track, focusing on yourself. You deserve to be happy." Her words struck a chord. I realized how important it was to have a supportive network surrounding me during this time. We exchanged numbers, and I felt a renewed sense of hope at the prospect of rekindling our friendship. That afternoon, as I returned home, I received a text from Jenna, and my stomach twisted at the sight of her name. I hesitated before opening the message, knowing I had been trying to distance myself from her grasp. "Tom, can we please just talk? I miss you. I know I messed up. I'm trying to change. I want to make things right." I felt a surge of anger mixed pity. Part of me wanted to respond, to give her a piece of my mind, but another part reminded me of my progress. I was no longer the man who would let her manipulate my feelings. I took a deep breath and chose to ignore her message, focusing instead on the positive changes in my life. That evening, I went to a local meetup for outdoor enthusiasts. I was still trying to build new connections, and I found myself chatting with a group of people who shared my interests in hiking and nature. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in a long while I felt a sense of belonging. As the weeks rolled on, I continued to immerse myself in new activities. I signed up for a painting class, rediscovering the joy of expression through art. I found solace in the strokes of the brush, and it became a therapeutic outlet for my emotions. Each session was cathartic, an opportunity to channel my feelings into something tangible. But amidst all this growth, I still had moments of doubt. There were times when I would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with memories of Jenna. It was a confusing emotional landscape, grappling with the love I once felt and the hurt that came with her betrayal. One evening, after finishing a particularly vibrant painting that symbolized my journey towards healing, I sat back and reflected. I was proud of what I had created. It represented my transformation. But I also needed to confront the unresolved emotions that were still lingering. I reached out to my therapist for an appointment. During our session, I shared my struggles with moving on completely. "I feel like I'm doing well on the surface, but there are still moments when her memory creeps back in and I can't shake the sadness," I confessed. "Grief is a process, Tom," she said gently. "You've lost not just a partner but also a future you envisioned. Allow yourself to mourn that loss. It's okay to feel sad about what could have been, even as you move forward." Her words were a reminder that healing isn't linear. It's a winding path with ups and downs. I realized I had been fighting against my feelings, trying to push them away instead of processing them. With this newfound understanding, I began to give myself permission to feel, whether it was anger, sadness, or even moments of joy. I embraced the fact that healing takes time and I didn't have to rush the process. Then, just as I was beginning to find my footing, I received an unexpected call from Jenna. I hesitated, my heart racing at the thought of hearing her voice again, but I took a deep breath and answered. "Tom," she said, her voice trembling. "I know you're likely tired of hearing from me, but I really need to talk to you." I've been doing a lot of reflecting and I want to apologize in person. I felt my chest tighten. It was the conversation I had been dreading. Jenna, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm focusing on moving forward with my life, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I understand, but please, just hear me out. I've been working on myself and I genuinely want to make amends. I'm sorry for everything I did, she pleaded. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. I thought about the progress I had made and how far I had come. I wrestled with the urge to give her a chance, but I also knew I had to prioritize my own healing. I appreciate that, but I need to be honest with you. I'm not in a place where I can entertain the idea of us getting back together. I still need time to heal, I said firmly. She was silent for a moment before responding. I get it. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry for what I did. I miss you, and I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me one day. As the call ended, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I had set a boundary, and for the first time I felt empowered in doing so. I recognized that her apology didn't change what had happened, but it did allow me to close a chapter in my life. Moving forward, I decided to focus on what truly mattered, myself. I was learning to embrace the subtle joys of life and rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. I was creating a new future, one that was no longer overshadowed by betrayal but illuminated by hope and possibility. I knew that. Healing would take time, but I was ready to continue my journey, one step at a time. And with each passing day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what lay ahead. As the weeks turned into months, I felt myself gradually slipping into a new routine, one that felt authentic and true. The process of healing was ongoing, but it was becoming more manageable. I found myself looking forward to each day, excited about the possibilities that lay ahead of me. I had embraced a lifestyle that was filled with new friendships, hobbies, and a fresh perspective on life. With the divorce proceedings moving forward, I felt a sense of liberation. I had spent years feeling trapped and suffocated, but now I was reclaiming my independence. I signed a lease on a small apartment not too far from our old home, a space I could call my own. It felt like a blank canvas where I could paint the next chapter of my life however I chose. I continued to attend therapy, which had become a crucial part of my routine. It provided me with a safe space to explore my emotions and reflect on my journey. My therapist encouraged me to lean into my creativity, and I had started submitting some of my paintings to local galleries. It was terrifying to put my work out there, but the thrill of sharing my art with others was exhilarating. One day, as I was preparing for an upcoming gallery showing, I received a surprise call from Sarah, my college friend. "Hey, Tom, I'm in town and I'd love to catch up. Want to grab dinner?" I felt a flutter of excitement. "Absolutely. It's been too long," I replied, grateful for the chance to reconnect. When we met at a cozy restaurant, Sarah's warmth and easy laughter made me feel at ease. As we shared stories over dinner, I felt a spark of connection. It was refreshing to talk to someone who knew me before the weight of my past had settled on my shoulders. We reminisced about our college days and discussed our current lives, and I found myself opening up about my recent experiences, the heartbreak, and my journey towards healing. "I'm proud of you, Tom," she said, her eyes shining. "It takes a lot of courage to face that kind of pain and come out stronger. Not everyone can do that." Her support felt like a balm for my soul, and as the night wore on, we found ourselves laughing and sharing more than just our stories. There was a chemistry between us, a budding connection that felt both exciting and daunting. As the weeks passed and I continued to navigate my newfound independence, I started to see hints of a romance blossoming between Sarah and me. We went hiking, explored art exhibits, and enjoyed lazy weekends filled with laughter and conversation. Each moment felt liberating, as though I was rediscovering parts of myself that had long been buried beneath the weight of my former life. But despite the budding relationship, there were moments when Jenna's memories would creep back in. Sometimes a song would remind me of our time together, or I'd see a couple holding hands and feel a pang of nostalgia. However, I had learned to acknowledge these feelings without allowing them to consume me. I realized that healing is not about forgetting. It's about learning to carry those memories without letting them define my present. Eventually, the day came when the divorce was finalized. I felt a mix of emotions, relief and sadness intertwined. I had spent so long preparing for this moment, yet it felt surreal to finally reach the end of that chapter. As I signed the papers, I took a moment to reflect on everything I had gone through, the pain, the betrayal, and ultimately, the growth. In the following months, I fully embraced my new life. I had become actively involved in the local art community, finding joy in expressing myself through my work. My paintings began to resonate with others, and I received positive feedback from gallery visitors. I was beginning to feel like a part of something bigger, like I was contributing to the world in a meaningful way. As I shared more moments with Sarah, I realized how far I had come. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was thriving, exploring love in a new light. I could feel myself opening up again, trusting and allowing someone else into my heart. One evening, as we walked along the waterfront, the sun setting in a brilliant display of colors, I turned to Sarah. "You know, I didn't think I'd ever get here after everything that happened. I honestly thought I'd be broken forever." She smiled softly, taking my hand. "You fought hard to get to this point, Tom. You deserve every ounce of happiness that comes your way." I looked into her eyes and felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had learned a valuable lesson through the turbulence of my past, that healing is an ongoing journey. It's not about erasing the hurt, but rather about finding strength in vulnerability and allowing oneself to be open to new experiences. As we continued walking, I felt a sense of gratitude, not just for the present moment but for the past that had shaped me. I had emerged from the ashes of my former life, ready to embrace the future, whatever it may hold. In that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I would continue to grow, to love, and to cherish the journey ahead. The path might lead me down unexpected routes, but I was ready to face each turn with resilience and hope. And as I looked at Sarah, I couldn't help but feel that perhaps, just perhaps, I was writing a new story, one filled with love, joy, and boundless possibility.